Dear Lord, we thank you for the day and the hot weather. We thank you for the time to God that we can spend time together in prayer. We thank you for this Bible study, and we lift up everyone that is watching on Facebook Live. We thank you for the ones on Zoom. We thank you for the people that are coming into the service. We lift up the people of God, and we say praise be to God. Amen.
Amen. Beautiful, Peggy. Thank you. All right, so we have Judges 8, 9, and 10. And if we thought that Gideon wasn't such a nice person in the early parts of Judges, we're going to find out how really lousy he is tonight. So, as we come into Judges 8, it's near the end of the battle. And the Ephraimites, or of the tribe of Ephraim, they didn't get invited to the battle early on. So, Gideon just called them near the end. So they said, why have you treated us like this? They wanted to be in, the battle, the whole battle. And Gideon comes up with a perfect excuse because he's learned how to be a diplomat. Early on in Judges, he was just scared. He made a lot of wrong decisions. Now he's learned how to be diplomatic, but he's still going to make wrong decisions. So he tells them, well, I just wanted to call you in when I needed you, and after all, you captured Oreb and Zeb in verse 3, the Midianite leaders. And he says, how better are your grapes and how big is your harvest? Just kind of building them up. So this kind of calmed them down. Now, throughout Judges, we're going to see how not only they get more and more disobedient to God, we're going to start to see more civil strife, more infighting among the tribes. And that's really important to Israel because they weren't only a religious nation, their whole thing was all about keeping the nation together. So to see this civil strife starting to happen, we know things are going to get worse, and they will. In verse 4, Gideon and his 300 men, exhausted yet keeping up the pursuit, came to the Jordan and crossed it. He said to the men of Sukkoth, give my troops some bread, they are worn out. I'm still pursuing Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian. But the officials of Sukkoth said, do you already have the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna in your possession? Why should we give bread to your troops? Another sign of this civil strife. They don't want to help out their countrymen, even though they're defending the whole nation against these invaders. And what we don't know at this point is, we know that Gideon has 300 men, but we don't really know how many people he's chasing. And it turns out, in verse 10, we're going to find out that he's chasing 15,000 men. So you've got 300 people. They're already tired from fighting, I think, 10,000, and now they still have to beat 15,000 more. So these guys are really worn out. So Gideon is rightfully angry. The leaders of Sukkoth, they probably don't think that Gideon has any chance of defeating the 15,000 men with his 300, so they're kind of hedging their bets. They figure if we help out Gideon now and he loses, the Midianites are going to be mad at us and they're going to wipe us out. So their thinking wasn't that far off, but still they didn't believe in God. Because God told Gideon, I will be with you. I'm going to give you all the strength you need. So that should have been enough for the whole country of Israel to believe in Gideon and God. Then Gideon replied, just for that, just for not feeding my men, I will tear your flesh with desert thorns and briars. Pretty nasty guy. From there he went up to Peniel and made the same request of them, but they answered just as the men of Sukkoth had. So he said to the men of Peniel, when I return in triumph, I will tear down this tower. Verse 10, now Zebah and Zalmunna were in Karkor with a force of about 15,000 men. So here we find out that Gideon's going up against 15,000. And in verse 10, we do a little bit more research and we find out that the 15,000 men plus the 120,000 swordsmen that had fallen tell us that Gideon's force of 300 were empowered by God's promise of victory. There's no way that he could have beat all these people with the 300 he had. Now you remember when he first had his force, I think he started out with something like 10,000, and God says, no, that's too many. Cut it down to 3,000, no, it's still too many. And God says, here's what I want you to do. It's a test, the way they drink, and he only ended up with 300 men. God says, that's perfect. Now everybody will know that you could never beat the size of the Midian army with just as 300 men, that I had to help you. And that's exactly what happened. So Gideon went up in verse 11 by the route of the nomads east of Nobah and Jogbeha and attacked the unsuspecting army. Zebah and Zalmunna, the two kings of Midian, fled, but he pursued them and captured them, routing their entire army. Gideon, son of Joash, in verse 13, then returned from the battle by the pass of Heres. Here he caught a young man of Succoth and questioned him. And the young man wrote down for him the names of the 77 officials of Succoth, the elders of the town. Then Gideon came and said to the men of Succoth, here are Zebah and Zalmunna, about whom you taunted me by saying, do you already have the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna in your possession? Why should we give your bread? Just rehashing what they told him. He took the elders of the town and taught the men of Succoth a lesson by punishing them with desert thorns and briars. He also pulled down the tower of Peniel and killed the men of that town. He wiped out everybody because he was so angry. And towers of ancient Israel were known as citadels, and they were there for defensive reasons because that was like their lookout points. So it was very important that they had these towers. Now he got rid of that. In verses 16 and 17, a lot of commentators said that Gideon kind of overreacted to the leaders of Succoth and Peniel by torturing the elders and killing all the men. Kind of an overreaction, but this is the start of how he starts to trend being bad, and he gets worse as the story goes on. And he even wanted to insult. Did I skip a page? He wanted to insult the leaders by having his son kill them, because you would never want to be killed by a boy, because that means you just weren't strong enough. But his son didn't draw his sword because he was only a boy. Verse 21, Zebah and Zalmunna said, come, do it yourself. As is the man, so is his strength. Because the two leaders, those two kings, they didn't want to be killed by his son. Because like I said, that would be like an insult. Just like when that tent woman drove the spike through the king's head, that was an insult too. As Deborah tells us in the past chapters of Judges, because a man should never be killed by a woman, even though a strong woman like she was. Now here's where Gideon really starts going downhill. Gideon's ephod. The Israelites said to Gideon, rule over us, you, your son, your grandson, because you have saved us from the hand of Midian. They're giving Gideon all the glory. They're not even realizing that Gideon didn't do anything, that God is the one who turned over the Midianites to them. So they want to make Gideon the king. God doesn't need kings, as we'll find out later. But Gideon turns them down. In verse 23 he says, I will not rule over you, nor will my son rule over you. The Lord will rule over you. So he has a little bit of common sense left yet. But he says, verse 24, I do have one request, that each of you give me an earring from your share of the plunder. It was the custom of the Ishmaelites to wear gold earrings. Everybody back then wore a lot of gold. They wore a lot of jewelry, and everybody wore jewelry. Women were known to wear up to 15 pairs of earrings. So if you can imagine finding space for 15 earrings in your ear, I don't know how they did it. And as we heard about the kings, Some of them even put ornaments on their camels to show how rich the kings were. So he says, okay, I don't want to be king, but I want you to give me some gold. I want payment. Verse 25, they answered, we'll be glad to give them. So they spread out a garment, and each of them threw a ring from his plunder into it. The weight of the gold rings he asked for came to 1,700 shekels, or about 43 pounds of gold. So that's a lot of gold. Not counting the ornaments, the pendants, and the purple garments worn by the kings of Midian's, or the chains that were on the camel's neck. So in addition to that 43 pounds of gold from earrings and rings, he got a bunch of other stuff. Verse 27, Gideon made the gold into an ephod. We know from our studies of Exodus and our other Old Testament studies that the ephod was only supposed to be worn by the priests. I should say priest, only by the high priest. And it was to be designed by God. In Exodus chapter 28, verse 30, God tells them, put the Urim and the Thummim in the breastpiece so that they may be over Aaron's heart whenever he enters the presence of the Lord. Thus Aaron will always bear the means of making decisions for the Israelites over his heart of the Lord. Now, we have a supplement called The Significance of the Ephod, so you guys can read that and see how God designed it to be a reminder not only of his glory, but of the 12 tribes of Israel. Because in the chest piece, there were 12 stones, each with a different color, to represent one of the tribes, one of the 12 tribes.
Interruption, Pastor.
Yes, sir.
Kind of indicates to me that the priesthood, the Levites, were not very effective at all.
Yep. They really started to slide, Gary, after once Joshua died. The whole country, well, they had no leaders. That's why God assigned them judges, but the priests weren't good. Neither the Aaronite priests or the Levite priests or the judges. The judges are going to continue to get worse and worse, and the priests are no better. We're really going to see this in the Old Testament as we move further and further with the prophets. And then we get even into Jesus' time with the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and we see how terrible the priesthood got. They were just worried about their titles, they were worried about being honored, and they really didn't care about the people. So Gary, you hit it right on the head. The priests were no longer the leaders, the religious leaders of the country. They didn't do anything. Because they should have stood up and said, wait, only the high priest can wear the ephod, but they weren't around. So Gideon made the ephod, and all Israel prostituted themselves by worshiping it. And it became a snare to Gideon and his family. The ephod turned into an idol. The people no longer worshiped God, they were worshiping this thing that Gideon made. Gideon's death in verse 28. Thus Midian was subdued before the Israelites, and it did not raise its head again. During Gideon's lifetime, the land had peace for 40 years. Jerubbaal, son of Joash, and this is Gideon's other name, went back home to live. He had 70 sons of his own, for he had many wives. Now, we know he should have had many wives because the many wives, it's a sign of kingship. All the other kings in all the other countries, they had a lot of wives. Gideon should have just had one. But even though he turned down the offer of the Israelites to make him a king, he still acted like a king. And his concubine, who lived in Shechem, also bore him a son, whom he named Abimelech. And we know from our past Old Testament stories, the name Abimelech is not good. Abimelech, the name means my father is a king. So once again, Gideon turned down being a king, but he's acting like a king. He even called his son the son of the king. And the concubine, she's not even a legal wife of Gideon. So this guy Abimelech is not good. He has lower standing among all of Gideon's other sons, He's not even counted in the 7 legitimate sons of Gideon's wives. That's how low he was.
Trouble ahead.
Trouble ahead. You're right. And actually, as not that Gideon was a good judge, but he's the last of the kind of good judges. It really starts to slide downhill after this. And when we get towards the end of Judges, it's really awful. And of course, what usually happens when the judge dies, the Israelites start sinning again. And we start this cycle over and over again. So, verse 33, no sooner had Gideon died than the Israelites again prostituted themselves to the Baals. They're going back to Baal worship. And that's sacrificing their children, having sex as one of the religious rites, just not good. They set up Baal-berith as their god. Baal-berith means the Lord of the Covenant. So they even took the word covenant, which was the covenant between God, and they even turned that into something nasty by calling one of their Baal gods the God of the Covenant. And some commentaries believe that they combined elements of Israelite worship with the Moabite worship. Not good stuff. They also failed to show any loyalty to the family of Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, in spite of all the good things he had done for them. What's new? Judges 9. Abimelech, the son of the concubine, went to his mother's brothers in Shechem, so that the 70 natural brothers, and said to them, all his mother's clan. I made a mistake. So he went to Shechem and talked to his mother's brothers, not the good brothers of Gideon. So he's making a plot with them. Ask all the citizens of Shechem, which is better for you, to have all of 70 of Gideon's sons rule over you, or just one man? Remember, I'm a relative of yours. Now we've got another supplement called The Significance of Shechem, and not only was it a very good spot on the trade route, but it has some significance to the Jewish people. So I'll read that, and it'll bring to your remembrance of some of the other things that happened in Shechem. Not good stuff. When the brothers repeated all this to the citizens of Shechem, they were inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, he's related to us. They gave him 70 shekels of silver, one for each brother that he's going to kill, from the temple of Baal-berith, and Abimelech used it to hire reckless scoundrels who became his followers. He went to his father's home, to Gideon's home in Ophrah, and on one stone murdered his 70 brothers, the sons of Jerubbaal. Now, the irony of the one stone, we're later going to see that in Abimelech's death by one stone in chapter 9. So it's kind of like payback. So remember that one stone when we get to chapter 9. Mount Gerizim. And then we get into some symbolism about the olive tree, and then the fig tree, and then the vine. So basically the moral of the story is, in Jotham's parable, the olive tree, the fig tree, and the grapevine, they represent fruitful people who are too busy helping other people to be concerned with anything as meaningless as being royalty. So it's kind of another slam against Abimelech. The thorn bush, Abimelech, offers no real shade or any other benefit to the people. Verse 20 prophesies Abimelech destroying all of Shechem and Beth Millo, as well as the death of Abimelech. So even though all the people of Shechem helped out Abimelech, he's going to kill him. This guy was really, really scummy. So we go through this long parable, and basically you can summarize it by Abimelech is not a nice guy. He's worried about things no one needs to worry about, and he's going to meet a terrible end.
The Antichrist of Judges.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much, because
3